Welcome back to Season 2 of Daniel Smith's Colour Showdown. This is episode 2 and we are going to be comparing the Ultramarine Blue with the French Ultramarine. Now, there has been a long time debate on what the exact difference between Ultramarine Blue and French Ultramarine Blue actually is. A lot of brands in a lot of mediums carry both Ultramarine Blue and a French Ultramarine Blue, and they are made with the same pigment and they look very similar as well. There are lots of theories and technical details on the actual difference between the two. Some people say that French Ultramarine is the warmer, redder blue than the Ultramarine Blue, but that also depends on the brand of the watercolor you're looking at, and others say one has bigger particles than the other, so it granulates more. But for this series, I want to put the theories and the technical details aside and just focus on what these colors do on the paper and how it interacts with the mixing colors. So let's take a closer look at each color and then we'll come back and compare the two and see what the differences are. First up is the Ultramarine Blue, and it is made out of PB29 sodium aluminium sulfur silicate. Daniel Smith says Ultramarine Blue plots cooler and bluer than the more saturated French Ultramarine. Temperature aside, both blues have equal performance, light fastness, and transparency. Ultramarine Blue is slightly less granular in concentrated washes. For less saturation, sedimentation, and cost, use Ultramarine Blue straight for vibrant crayon-like color or mixed with a cool red for dark, effective neutrals. It is a Series 1 color. It is excellent in light fastness, transparent, medium staining, and granulating. Next up is the French Ultramarine, and like the Ultramarine Blue, it is also made out of PB29 sodium aluminium sulfur silicate. Daniel Smith says, this medium to dark, warm, reddish blue is highly light fast and medium tinting strength. Its sedimentary quality increases its versatility. Mixed with various portions of other blues, French Ultramarine is a wonderful sky pigment. Modify it with quinacridone gold for delightful greens that remains color coordinated. Mix French Ultramarine with quinacridone burnt orange and be rewarded with an amazing range of blues to brown greys. Mixed with either quinacridone rose or pink, a range of purples result. Now, Ultramarine Blue was Series 1, however, the French Ultramarine is actually a Series 2 color, and it will be interesting to see if that price increase shows up on the paper. It is excellent in light fastness, transparent, medium staining, and granulating. And we are back. The paints have dried, and overall impression, as we expected, they are pretty similar. They are very close, in fact. If I have to pick a difference, I would say that the overall impression of the French Ultramarine has a slight redder, warmer look to it than the Ultramarine Blue. But let's take a closer look at each of the tests we did and compare the two more closely. Looking at the washes, this side is Ultramarine Blue and this side is French Ultramarine. As you can see, they are both lovely granulating colors. The Ultramarines, the PB29s, are always my favorite granulating color, and they create beautiful washes. I think they both do a very good job of creating gradated washes on all the different papers. So just to recap, we have the sheet that is made out of the Bockingford cold press and then squares of hot press here and here and rough here and here, both also with the buckingwood papers, and then Archer's cold press. I'm not quite sure what happened here. I think that was more my fault for putting maybe a little bit too much water in right at the end. Normally the PB29s are very good at creating gradated washes. In terms of granulating, I know it's supposed to be like one is supposed to be more granulating than the other. If I had to pick between the two, I would say with the smallest of difference, that maybe the French ultramarine granulates a little bit more, but not by like a huge amount. You can certainly see the sedimentation settling here, whereas maybe the pattern of that is slightly less obvious here, and the same here, where you can see the texture of the paper a little bit more than the ultramarine blue. In terms of opacity, lifting and glazing, up here is your ultramarine blue and down here is the French ultramarine. As you can see, there's very little deposit over the black line. So yes, I would always say that ultramarine blue is a little bit more to the semi-transparent, but that's because I get very specific and absorbed in the details of transparency. But I still actually have ultramarine blue on my transparent palette, so it can totally pass as a transparent paint as well. Although they are both classified as mid staining, they actually lift pretty well. I would say that in the ultramarine blue, it does lift, but the deposit, the things that settle in the pits of the paper, doesn't lift quite so easily as the French ultramarine does, which is interesting because in terms of granulation, the French ultramarine is a fraction little bit stronger on the granulation, and yet the granulation lifts more easily than the ultramarine blue. Now, when it comes to glazing, ultramarine blue, I have to say, is one of my least favorite color to have to glaze, and that is because it lifts so easily. When you come to put the second layer of glaze on, it tends to lift the first layer up with it, and you can see that here and here pretty much equally in uneven glazes. In terms of gauzing, ultramarine blue is again my favorite color to gauze with. It's the first one where I was like really almost shocked at how well it produced linear patterns, and you can see here and here they both make brilliant gauzing colors. I would say if I had to pick a side that the French ultramarine is a fraction more intense in the blue than the ultramarine blue. In terms of salting, neither of them will react to salt. You can see texture left behind by where the salt crystals have been, but there's no the veining, fanning patterns happening at all with the salt. In terms of water blooms, it's not a pretty one to do the blooms with. It doesn't bloom and it just makes not a very pretty marks on there. In terms of how the two color mixes with other colors, this side is the ultramarine blue and this side is the French ultramarine. And just for reference, these other colors we mix the two colors with, and for comparison, this is these colors mixed with ultramarine blue, and this is these colors mixed with French ultramarine blue. In terms of complement, you're gonna find the perfect complement around about the yellow-orange hue for both ultramarine blue and the French ultramarine blue, and indeed with the cadmium yellow-orange on both colors, they make brilliant, lovely both warm and cool neutral grey. Especially this grey I'm really liking. I do also love neutralizing the ultramarine blue with the Daniel Smith transparent red oxide as well. That creates a lovely neutral as well. Both creates these lovely greens with the cadmium yellow light and these lovely purple hues that are all just gorgeous, but in particular the quinacridone violet with the ultramarine blue is really nice. I love this, and you get lots of lovely granulating purples around here with the vermilion and the permanent red and the quinacridone rose. You are of course going to get lovely blues and greens out of the phthalo blues and all the greens here. They're all really nice bright colors. So I would say that PB29 in general is probably my favorite color in my palette in terms of versatility and its characteristics and its uses. So in conclusion, what do I think of these two colors? Well, there isn't very much difference between the ultramarine blue and the French ultramarine blue. They are both lovely mixing colors that granulate well and gauze well and doesn't do quite well on the salt and the water. If I had to nitpick, then I would say that the French ultramarine is the warmer, redder blue, and it might granulate like a fraction more. But honestly, the difference is so minor that I can't give you a solid conclusion on this one is better than this one. And I know that's going to disappoint many of you. I know you come to watch these videos to be definitively shown, you know, the big difference between the two. Wow, there's a surprise. I didn't know that. But sometimes the two colors are so similar. And when they are so similar, I have to be honest with you and go, hey guys, there's not that much difference. In terms of which one is going to be your favorite over the other, I kind of feel like with the debate of ultramarine blue and French ultramarine blue is quite similar in the argument of which is the best Doctor in Doctor Who. In terms of your favorite Doctor Who, majority of people are going to go with the first Doctor that they were introduced to the series with. So of course, for me, for example, I love Matt Smith's Doctor because that was when I came into starting to watch the series. It's just, what do you know? It's how you build your framework of the world they create around, and anyone else feels like an imposter before or afterwards. And I feel like the ultramarine blue and the French ultramarine debate is similar. It just, I guess, majority of the time depends on which color you were introduced to first. So for me, I was introduced to ultramarine blue first. I know how it works and I know so much more about how it mixes with other colors and behaves on the paper than the French ultramarine blue. And unfortunately, there isn't a big enough difference for me to go, oh, actually, no, French ultramarine blue is way better than the ultramarine blue. I've done that with many other colors when I've started with one color and then I got introduced to another similar color and gone, oh, actually, no, that's way better for me. It works so much better. But here, I just don't feel like there's a big enough difference to warrant someone from jumping ship from one color to the other in either direction. So for me, certainly, I am going to stick to the ultramarine blue. I have a ton of ultramarine. I have a huge stock of ultramarine blue, both in terms of commercial paints and paints I make for myself. So I'm not about to jump ship to French ultramarine. They are both just as good as each other. And after that, I think it's just personal taste of what you're more comfortable with and what you have more experience in. Which one would you go for? Would you go for the ultramarine blue or the French ultramarine? Now, normally here I ask, if you've used one or both of these colors, please let us know how you use it. But I mean, French ultramarine and ultramarine blue are two colors that are very commonly found on the palette. So I think, that covers everyone. Instead, I'll be very keen to hear from you if you are one of those people that did jump ship either from the ultramarine blue to the French ultramarine or the other way around, and what made you make that change from one color to the other and what you felt the other color did better. That would be such an interesting discussion to have down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Daniel Smith Color Showdown. I hope this video was interesting and useful to you. If that was the case, then please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, then please do so. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.